Oil tankers, they're responsible for transporting oil in bulk to markets around the world. Over the years, they've gotten bigger and bigger as the global demand for oil continues to climb. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at 15 of the largest oil tankers in the world. Number 15, Chevron Voyager series. Some of the biggest oil tankers are no longer in service, but Chevron has a series of 3 VLCCs, or very large crude carriers, that currently are. The 3 tankers are the Houston Voyager, the Pascagoula Voyager, and the San Ramon Voyager. Each one of these very large crude carriers is capable of accommodating roughly 2 million barrels of oil. You better believe that oil tankers are transporting more than their fair share of oil. The tankers were built by the Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering in 2019. They were built by Moran Tankers, a Greek company. Houston Voyager is currently under the flagship of the Bahamas, with its home port in Nassau. It's 1,102 feet long and has a deadweight of 319,000 tons. Pascagoula Voyager has the same specs, and it's also under the flagship of the Bahamas, as is San Ramon Voyager, but the San Ramon Voyager has a deadweight of 318,000 tons. Number 14, Bellamia. With a length of 1,359 feet and a gross tonnage of 274,000 tons, Bellamia is the second largest oil tanker the world has ever seen. Bellamia was operated by the Maritime Society from Chelles, France, and was built by Chantier de l'Antique. This impressive oil tanker was a class ULCC and was first in service from 1976 to 1986. Bellamia was a sister ship to the Pierre Guillemot. However, during her time in service, the oil market was in decline. This, coupled with the fact that the ship could not operate in a lot of important areas given her size, meant that Bellamia wasn't used for a very long time. She was laid up in Norway in 1984, which ended her active service. She was later sent to South Korea, where she was scrapped. Number 13, DHT Colt. The DHT Colt is a very large crude carrier, or VLCC, that was built in 2018. She was built by Daewoo Shipping and Marine Engineering Corporation in South Korea. This massive tanker features a double hull and is actually gearless. And because this tanker is relatively new, it also features the latest maritime technology. This means that the DHT Colt can maximize speed and productivity while producing lower carbon emissions. She's currently operated by the independent crude oil tanker company DHT Management. The Colt sails under the Hong Kong flag and has a carrying capacity of 163,000 tons. She can also travel at a maximum speed of about 11.2 knots, and she's got a length of 1,102 feet. Number 12, Pierre Guillemot. Pierre Guillemot was built in 1977, and soon after its completion, it joined the ranks as one of the largest oil tankers in the world. She was one of 4 Batalus-class supertankers and was named after the French politician. She had a length of 1,359 feet and a gross tonnage of 274,000 tons. The massive tanker was operated by Elf Aquitaine, but given its size, it was unable to pass through the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal, so it could only really serve a limited number of ports. The tanker was sold to the Hyundai Corporation in 1983 and renamed as Ulsan Master, but the tanker was scrapped within the same year it was sold. Number 11, Esso Atlantic. Esso Atlantic was built by Hitachi Zosen Corporation from Ariake, Japan, and was operated by Esso Tankers upon completion. Esso Atlantic was one of just 7 ships in the whole world who had a deadweight capacity that surpassed 500,000 tons, so this tanker was a world record holder. Esso Atlantic's deadweight tonnage of 516,000 tons and her gross tonnage was about 259,000 tons. This behemoth tanker was in service from 1977 to 2002, but she could not navigate her way through the Panama or Suez Canals, or the English Channel. The Esso Atlantic was transferred to the Bahamas in 1983, where she was operated until 2002. She was then sold to shipbreakers for scrapping. Number 10, Eagle Trader. Eagle Trader is a very large crude carrier, and she's operated by MOL Tank Ship Management Asia. Eagle Trader, like all MOL ships, has a double engine, so she can run on methanol as well as standard ship fuel. Eagle Trader was built in 2018 by Mitsui Engineering and Shipbuilding, and this large oil tanker is currently sailing under the Japanese flag. With a length of 1,112 feet and a deadweight capacity of 312,000 tons. Eagle Trader is one of the largest oil tankers currently in service. So needless to say, if you're ever lucky enough to spot this tanker for yourself out on the water, it's likely a sight you won't forget. Number 9. Globetic Tokyo and Globetic London. So these tankers are really similar, so they should only occupy one spot on this list. This is the case with the sister tankers Globetic Tokyo and Globetic London, because apart from their names, they're pretty much the same. When Globetic Tokyo's keel was laid in 1972, she was the largest supertanker in the world. This was a title she held until her sister ship, the Globetic London, was launched in 1973, because the London was larger by 276 deadweight tons. But both ships had the capacity to hold 3.65 million barrels, so the small variance in size is pretty negligible. Both ships were built by Ishikawajima Harima Heavy Industries in Kure, Japan, and were owned by Globetic Tankers. The London was scrapped in 1985 and the Globetic Tokyo was scrapped in 1986, but their claim to fame lives on as two of the largest tankers ever built. Number 8. Burj Emperor and Burj Empress. The Burj Emperor and Burj Empress are another set of tankers that really only differ slightly. These two oil tankers are twin ships, and they were both built in 1975 in Japan. And while they were technically sister ships, the Burj Empress had a much longer life than the Emperor. The Emperor had a gross tonnage of about 203,000 tons, and the Empress had a gross tonnage of 198,000 tons. They both had a length of 1,252 feet, making them two of the largest supertankers ever built. The Emperor was in service until 1986 before it was scrapped. Burj Empress served for another 8 years, though, before it was scrapped, so the Empress had a much more fruitful life than her twin sister ship. Number 7. Esso Northumbria. Esso Northumbria was the first ship in a series of very large crude carrier ships. It was built by Swan Hunter in 1969, and when she launched on May 2nd of that year, she was the largest vessel to have been built in Britain at that time. And that says a lot, since Britain has built some pretty big ships over the years. Nicknamed Big Geordie, Esso Northumbria had a length of 1,143 feet and a beam of 170 feet, with a draft of 84 feet. Her gross tonnage was 126,000 tons, and she could travel at a top speed of 16 knots. 16 knots might not sound very fast, and technically it isn't, but given the sheer size of this supertanker, it's actually pretty fast. She was designed to carry crude oil from the Persian Gulf, but she was plagued with problems right from the get-go. Her hull cracked under stress and needed a lot of repairs during her career. This led to an early retirement in 1982 because her operators feared she would have a major spill. All in, the Northumbria only spent 12 years in service before she was broken up at Kaohsiung, Taiwan. Number 6. SS Torrey Canyon. The SS Torrey Canyon was an LR2 Suez Max class of oil tankers. The Suez Max is a type of tanker that can transit the Suez Canal, hence the name. So unlike a lot of other ships on this list, which are way too big for that canal, the SS Torrey Canyon could go where they couldn't. She boasted a cargo capacity of 118,000 tons of crude oil. She was owned by the Barracuda Tanker Corporation and her port of registry was Liberia. She was built by the Newport News Shipbuilding, and she first launched in October of 1958. This ship had a length of 974 feet and could travel at a maximum speed of 17.3 knots. And while she isn't the biggest oil tanker on this list, she's worth mentioning since she ran aground in March 1967 and caused a catastrophic environmental disaster. She sank during this accident, which made her the largest vessel to ever be wrecked at that time. Number 5. Sea Song. Sea Song bears a name that sounds like it should be reserved for a gorgeous sailing yacht or a lavish speedboat. Most oil tankers don't have lovely names. The names tend to land more on the strong and masculine side of things. But rest assured, this alternatively named ship is in fact an oil tanker. And unlike a lot of other massive oil tankers who've been scrapped, Sea Song is still going strong. She's a crude oil tanker that cruises under the Malta flag. Crude oil tankers are responsible for moving large quantities of unrefined crude oil from its point of extraction to the oil refineries. So like all crude tankers, Sea Song plays an integral role in overall oil production, refinement, and distribution. Sea Song has a gross tonnage of 57,000 tons and was built in 2005 by Hyundai Heavy Industries in Ulsan, South Korea, and she's owned by Maris. Number 4. Prairial. Prairial was built in 1979 by the Chantier de l'Antique shipbuilders. The tanker was built for the Compagnie Nationale de Navigation, and she was the final vessel of the Battleless-class supertankers. Prairial was unique from the other ships in her class, though, because she was the only ship in the Battleless class that had a career longer than 10 years. She also likely suffered a bit from an identity crisis given her plethora of names and ports of registry during her career. During her time in service, she went by several different names, including Sea Brilliance in 1985, Hella Foss in 1986, and finally the Sea Giant in 1997. She also saw several ports of registry during her time in service: Le Havre when she was the Prairial, Panama City when she was Sea Brilliance, Piraeus when she was Hella Foss, and Monrovia when she was Sea Giant. She also holds the title of the third biggest ship ever constructed. She had a length of 1,359 feet, a draft of 93 feet, and a speed of 16 knots. Prairial was first launched on September 21, 1979, and her fate was that pretty much of every other oil tanker. She was scrapped at the Gandhani shipbreaking yard in Pakistan in September 2003. Number 3. Exxon Valdez. The Exxon Valdez was a massive oil tanker with an equally massive environmental disaster attached to her name. But before we touch on what actually happened to the tanker, let's take a look at her specs first, because although she's only associated with a really negative occurrence, she still holds some positive boast-worthy bragging rights. The tanker was first launched in 1986 and was built by National Steel and Shipbuilding Company. She went by several different names such as Sea River, Mediterranean, and Oriental Nicety, to name a few. The ship was 987 feet long and had a deadweight tonnage of 214,000 tons. But on March 24, 1989, she ran aground in Prince William Sound in Alaska. This crash caused 11 million gallons of oil to spill out into the ocean. And to add insult to injury, the place where the Exxon Valdez crashed was an especially ecologically sensitive location. The scale of the spill, coupled with the location, made Exxon Valdez's oil spill one of the worst and largest environmental disasters in United States history. The effects were far-reaching. The spill affected more than 1,300 miles of shoreline and killed an estimated 250,000 seabirds, 250 bald eagles, 300 harbor seals, and 22 killer whales, amongst a lot of other animals and sea life. Surprisingly, Exxon Valdez lived to serve another day. Her official service didn't end until 2012, when she was beached for dismantling. Number 2. TI-class supertankers. Behold, the TI-class supertankers. These are the largest oil tankers in service today and the most famous. They are a class of tankers that have the distinction of being some of the largest oil tankers that the world has ever seen. The fleet's comprised of the TI Africa, TI Asia, TI Europe, and TI Oceania. They're operated by Tankers International LLC, hence the TI component of their name. The tankers were built by Daewoo Shipping and Marine Engineering, and they were built for the company Hellenspont in 2003 in Okpo, South Korea. They've got a length of 1,247 feet and a gross tonnage of 234,000 tons. And they have the coveted distinction of being the first ULCCs to be built in the last 25 years. That's ultra-large crude carriers. All belonging to the TI class, these massive oil tankers have some similarities, but they also have some marked differences as well. So although they are a class, let's take a quick look at each one individually. Starting with the TI Europe, this large tanker has a gross tonnage of 441,000 tons and was the third in the class of 4 to be built. Before the acquisition from Euronav NV and Partners, TI Europe was originally called Hellenspont Tara. She's known for having a higher speed than other tankers of similar size. Her speed gave her a higher earning capacity, so she's put to good use. TI Asia had the name Hellenspont Alhambra, but it was renamed in 2004. The Asia had a gross tonnage of 441,000 tons, and she was eventually converted into a floating storage and offloading vessel, and when that happened, her name was officially changed once again to FSO Asia to indicate the shift in usage. This is the same with TI Africa, who was once Hellenspont Metropolis, who is now FSO Africa. Both FSO Asia and FSO Africa are still in active service. The TI Oceania, on the other hand, has similar specs with the same gross tonnage as all her sister ships. She was originally called the Hellenspont Fairfax, and like the other ships in her class, she's been in active service since 2002. And although the TI Oceania is very similar to the TI Europe, Asia, and Africa, the Oceania is the most famous of the lot. She was the subject of a TV show called Super Ships. The show aired on the Discovery Channel. It was a starring role not offered to the other TI-class supertankers. so she's got a few more bragging rights than her fellow class ships. It's not really clear why the Oceana was chosen over her sister ships. Perhaps she just had a little more star quality. In any case, if you're looking for the largest of the oil tankers currently in service, then look no further than this band of ultra-large crude carriers. Number 1. Seawise Giant. When it comes to the largest oil tanker in the world, none can compare to the colossal size of the iconic Seawise Giant. Also known as the Knock Nevis, the Yahoo Viking, and the Happy Giant, Seawise Giant is the largest ultra-large crude carrier that the world has ever seen. She was built by Sumitomo Heavy Industries in the late 1970s. She had the greatest deadweight tonnage ever recorded. Fully laden, her displacement was an unrivaled 657,000 tons. Seawise Giant was 1,504 feet long with a beam of 225 feet, a draft of 80 feet, and a depth of 97 feet. Seawise Giant was sunk in 1988 during the Iran-Iraq War, and many thought that this was the end of this massive tanker, but she rose to sail again. Seawise Giant was restored and sent back into service, and was in service until 2009, and was scrapped then in 2010. Even though this massive oil tanker no longer graces the seas with her majestic presence, she still holds several titles. Seawise Giant is the longest ship ever constructed and the heaviest self-propelled ship of any kind in the world. Her uncontested size has earned the Seawise Giant the #1 spot on this list of the top 15 largest oil tankers. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Watch our Waves playlist for more top 15 videos about massive waves. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best wave videos.